Good evening, settle in and relax. The story starts now.
My name is Harper Jennings. I'm 32 years old, and I map underground water for a living. 6 months ago, my grandfather Earl died in his sleep on the same 40-acre plot in Washington County, Ohio, that his grandfather cleared by hand in 1903. 2 weeks after the funeral, my mother sat me down at her kitchen table, the same yellow formica where I ate peanut butter sandwiches after school, and slid a quitclaim deed across the salt shaker. "Tyler needs this for the family," she said. "Sign it, or you're not my daughter anymore." I didn't sign. Instead, I drove to the county recorder's office in Marietta, paid $11 for a title search, and found out my brother had already used my land to secure a $200,000 loan for a drone delivery startup that never delivered a single package. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. This channel is where the quiet ones finally speak. If you've ever been told that your inheritance is just family property, drop a comment and subscribe before this story is over. Now, let me tell you how my own brother mortgaged land he didn't own, and how my mother helped him bury the paperwork. I need to back up so you understand what kind of woman they thought they were dealing with. I didn't take over the family business, I left it. At 18, I watched my brother Tyler drop out of community college to find himself, while I loaded my Honda with secondhand textbooks and drove to Ohio University to study geology. 8 years later, I had a master's in hydrology, a job with the state's Environmental Protection Agency, and a reputation for finding water sources in places the old-timers swore were dry. My grandfather understood that. Earl Jennings was a man who believed dirt had a memory. He could stand in a field and tell you where the spring ran by, the way the ironweed grew. When I came home with my degree, he didn't shake my hand. He handed me a leather survey book from 1962 and said, "You see what the ground is doing. The rest of them just walk on it." He died last March. The will was simple. The 40 acres, woods, a wet meadow, and a spring that never froze went to me. To Harper, specifically. Not to the family, not to the Jennings name, to me. My mother read that will like it was a typo. Diane Jennings is a woman who believes blood is a contract. She raised us in a brick ranch outside Marietta where the thermostat stayed at 72 and the refrigerator displayed every cousin's graduation photo in chronological order. Tyler was always in the center. He was the son, the prince, the one who would carry on the legacy, even though his legacy so far included 3 failed businesses, a repossessed truck, and a tattoo of a wolf howling at a stock chart. I was the daughter who moved to Columbus for work, who came home for Thanksgiving and left before the pie cooled, who my mother introduced at church as my Harper, the environmentalist, like it was a condition she was managing. When Earl's will was read, my mother didn't cry. She nodded. Then she started arranging. The first arrangement came 3 days after probate closed. She called me on a Tuesday while I was in the field, boots sunk into a soybean farm in Licking County, testing nitrate levels. "Harper, we need to talk about the land." I said okay. She said, "Tyler has a vision. A family ranch. Organic beef, agritourism, the whole thing. Your grandfather would have wanted the land to stay in the family name." I reminded her that the land was in the family name, my name. She sighed. That sigh. The one that meant I was being difficult, emotional, ungrateful. "You're not even there," she said. "You don't live here. Tyler does. He has a family starting." Tyler had a girlfriend of 8 months and a part-time job at a golf store. But in my mother's vocabulary, that was a foundation. I told her I'd think about it. That was a lie. I was already driving. I didn't go to the land that weekend. I went to the Washington County Recorder's office. The clerk was a woman named Pat, who had gone to high school with my aunt. She recognized my face before I showed my ID. "Earl's girl," she said. I asked for a full chain of title on the 40 acres. She printed it out in 11 pages. I sat in the hallway on a bench beneath a portrait of some judge from 1897 and read every word. The deed from Earl to me was clean. Recorded March 14th. No liens, No easements, no encumbrances. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt the same itch I get when a water table reading doesn't match the topography, something hidden, something moving underneath. I went back to the counter and asked Pat one more question. Has there been any UCC filing or mortgage recorded against this parcel in the last year? She typed. She paused. She printed one more sheet and handed it over without meeting my eyes. It was a security agreement, dated January 10th, 2 months before Earl died, secured by the 40 acres. Lender, Marietta Community Trust. Borrower, Jennings Family Holdings, LLC. Principal, $200,000. Signed by Tyler Jennings, President, and on the signature line for the property owner, granting the security interest, Harper Jennings. My name, my handwriting's evil twin. I stared at that signature for 5 minutes in the fluorescent hallway. The H was too round. The loop on the P was theatrical. Something I'd never do. It looked like a signature drawn by someone who had seen my name on a Christmas card and practiced twice. The notary block was stamped by a woman named Linda Karras. I didn't know her, but I knew the witness line. Second signature, Diane Jennings. My mother had watched him forge my name and signed her own beside it. I didn't call anyone from that bench. I photographed every page with my phone. Then I drove to the only person in my family who had ever told me the truth without seasoning it first. My Aunt Gloria, Earl's youngest daughter, lived in a double-wide on the edge of the property with 3 dogs and a Dish Network subscription she claimed was her only vice. I didn't knock. I just held up the papers. She read them on her porch with a cigarette burning down to the filter. "That little weasel," she said. "That absolute little weasel." She told me what the rest of the family had been whispering since February. Tyler had a business partner in Columbus. Some guy from a podcast who sold him on drone delivery for rural pharmacies. Tyler had put in $50,000 of his own money, which turned out to be the advance on my mother's reverse mortgage, and when that burned up in 3 months, he needed more. He came to Earl in January, Gloria said, asked him to co-sign a loan using the land. Earl said no, told him the land was Harper's and he wouldn't put a fingerprint on it while he was breathing. So Tyler waited until Earl stopped breathing. Then he made his own paperwork. I asked Gloria why she didn't tell me. She flicked the cigarette into a coffee can. "Because Diane told everyone you knew. Said you and Tyler were going into business together. That you signed off so he could get the startup capital, and you'd both get rich when the company sold." She looked at me with something worse than pity. She told that story at the beauty parlor Harper, in March, while we were planning the funeral luncheon. I sat on Gloria's porch steps and felt the ground do something it wasn't supposed to do. It opened, not dramatically. Just a slow, patient shift, like sinkhole country. My mother hadn't just enabled Tyler. She had authored a universe where I was already complicit, where my signature was a prop in a play she was directing. And the worst part was, it had worked. For 6 months, everyone in Marietta believed I was Tyler's silent partner, that I had traded my grandfather's land for a piece of a tech fantasy. The only reason no one had asked me about it was because they thought they already knew. I didn't go home that night. I drove to Columbus and sat in my apartment with the chain of title spread across my kitchen table like a dissection. I am a hydrologist. I trace what moves beneath the surface. So that's what I did. I started with the loan. Marietta Community Trust was a real bank, small and hungry. I called their commercial lending department the next morning from my office line, identified myself as the property owner, and asked for a copy of the loan file. The loan officer, a man named Doug, got very quiet. Then he said, "Miss Jennings, we were told you were a partner in the LLC." I said I was not. I said I had never heard of Jennings Family Holdings until yesterday. I said I wanted to see the application. Doug asked me to hold. He came back 10 minutes later and said, "I think you should come in. This week." I recorded the call. Ohio is a one-party consent state. I knew that now. I knew a lot of things now. The meeting was Thursday. Doug spread the file across a conference table that smelled like lemon polish and anxiety. The loan application listed my income, my employer, my social security number. All accurate. All information Tyler could have gotten from my mother's files. She kept copies of everyone's tax returns in a fireproof box under her bed. The collateral section included a quitclaim deed from me to Jennings Family Holdings, dated January 5th, 2 weeks before the security agreement. My signature again. The same forged hand. But this time, attached to it, was an affidavit. Sworn statement by Diane Jennings. I, Diane Jennings, attest that my daughter Harper Jennings is currently traveling abroad for work and has authorized me to execute all documents related to the family land transfer on her behalf. I have known her handwriting for 32 years and confirm the signature above is genuine. She had lied to a bank, under oath, on paper. Doug watched me read it. His face was the color of old grout. We had no reason to doubt, he said. Your mother has been a customer here for 40 years. She sits on the church finance committee with our CEO's wife. I asked him what the loan status was. He said Tyler had missed 3 payments. The bank was preparing foreclosure proceedings against the land, against my land, because of a loan I never took, signed by a mother who would rather bury me in paperwork than admit her son was a thief. I didn't cry in that conference room. I didn't yell. I opened my notebook and wrote down everything Doug said. Dates, amounts, default notices. Then I asked for copies. He gave them to me. Not because he had to. Because I think he was afraid of what I would do if he didn't. That night, I called a lawyer. Elena Voss worked out of a renovated Victorian in Athens, Ohio, specializing in property fraud and quiet title actions. I emailed her the documents at 11 p.m. She called me at 6:15 the next morning. Harper, she said, your brother committed forgery. Your mother committed perjury. And the bank is about to foreclose on property they never had valid collateral for. How quiet do you want this? I told her I didn't want it quiet. I wanted it fair. She laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. Fair is expensive, but documented is cheap. Start documenting. So I did. For 3 weeks, I became a machine. I pulled my credit reports. No hard inquiries from Marietta Community Trust, which meant Tyler had used my mother's access to bypass normal channels. I requested my own tax transcripts from the IRS, no LLC income. I called the Ohio Secretary of State. Jennings Family Holdings, LLC was registered January 2nd. Single member, Tyler Jennings. Registered agent, Diane Jennings, at her home address. My mother wasn't just a witness. She was the legal face of the operation. I kept it all in a gray accordion folder that grew thick enough to split its seams. Voss called it the file that could indict a county. I called it my insurance. But I needed one more thing. I needed Tyler to say it out loud. Not in a bank document. Not in my mother's careful script. In his own voice, with his own contempt. I got my chance at my cousin's birthday party in April. My mother insisted I come. The family needs to see you, she said, like I was a disputed artifact. Tyler was there, wearing a blazer with the drone company logo on the chest pocket, drinking my uncle's bourbon and talking about scaling operations. I sat on the porch with a beer I didn't drink and waited. At some point, he found me. He always found me when he needed an audience. Hey, Harp, he said, settling into the rocking chair like he owned the porch, the house, and the oxygen. Mom says you're still being weird about the land transfer. I kept my voice level. I never signed a transfer, Tyler. He laughed. That dry, nasal laugh he'd had since we were kids. Come on, you know how Mom is. She handles the details. You were busy with work. We just needed it done. I said, you forged my name. He rocked once, twice. Then he leaned in, bourbon on his breath, and said the sentence I had been fishing for. Look, even if you didn't sign, Mom was going to make you sign eventually. That's what family is. You share. You don't hold out on your own brother because you're jealous he's finally doing something big. I felt my thumb press the record button in my jacket pocket. So you knew I didn't sign, I said. He waved a hand. Close enough. Mom said you'd come around. She always says you're stubborn, but you fold when it counts. Remember the car? The laptop? You'll fold on this too. He patted my knee. Just sign the deed at the wedding, Harp. Make it clean. Make Mom happy. It's not like you're using the land anyway. I smiled at him. I think it scared him, because he stopped rocking. You're right, I said. I'll see you at the wedding. I drove home with his voice in my phone and my hands shaking on the wheel. Not from fear, from voltage. Voss listened to the recording in her office with her eyes closed. When it ended, she opened them and said, That's a confession to conspiracy. Your mother is co-conspirator 1. Your brother is 2. And that wedding you're talking about? She checked her calendar. June 14th. That's 6 weeks away. If we file now, we could have him served at the altar. I said no. I didn't want a process server in the wedding photos. I wanted something slower. Something that would last. Voss tilted her head. You want the table? She said. Before the courtroom. I said I wanted both. I wanted them to know the courtroom was already booked while they were still setting the table. The wedding was at a vineyard outside Marietta. Tyler was marrying a girl named Jessica who worked at the same golf store and believed he was in tech. My mother had planned the whole thing down to the napkin rings, which were supposed to look like horseshoes for the ranch theme. The ranch. The one that didn't exist except as a Pinterest board, and a lie she told herself so she could sleep. I arrived early. I wore a navy dress I had bought 3 years ago for a conference in Denver. Nothing flashy. Nothing that said war. My mother met me at the guest book table with her arms out, as if the last 3 months of pressure and forged documents had been a misunderstanding. Harper, she said, squeezing my shoulders. You look lovely. Tyler will be so glad you're here. I said I was glad too. I meant it. I had been waiting for this room my whole life. The ceremony was at 4. By 5:30, the tent was glowing with string lights and the band was playing something with a fiddle. I waited through the first dance, the cake cutting, the toast from my uncle about the Jennings legacy. Then I walked to the head table. My mother saw me coming. She always saw me coming. She met me before I reached Tyler, her hand on my elbow, steering me toward the corner near the gift table. Now, she said, her voice pitched low and bright, the voice of a woman about to close a deal. Brett has the deed in the car. We can do this quietly, sweetheart. Sign it. Give it to Tyler as a wedding gift. And the whole land issue is behind us. The family will finally be whole. I looked at her. At the woman who had packed my lunches, who had cried at my high school graduation, who had signed a false affidavit and told a bank I was abroad so her son could steal my inheritance. And if I don't sign? I asked. She didn't hesitate. She had rehearsed this. Then you're not my daughter anymore. You're not a Jennings. And you can explain to everyone here why you're tearing this family apart over dirt. She said dirt the way she might say pride. Something ugly. Something that shouldn't matter to a good girl. I reached into my bag. Not the purse. The bag. The gray accordion folder that had ridden in my passenger seat for 6 weeks. I didn't open it yet. I just held it against my hip and looked past her, to where Tyler was laughing at something his best man had said, his hand on Jessica's white shoulder. Mom, I said, do you know what I do for a living? I map aquifers. I find water where nobody else can see it. And do you know what the first rule of hydrology is? Water doesn't lie. It goes where the pressure takes it. And the pressure always wins. She blinked. I had never spoken to her in jargon before. I had never spoken to her as an expert. I opened the folder. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. The tent was loud enough that a raised voice would have been swallowed, but a quiet one made people lean in. I pulled out the first document, the security agreement. I laid it on the gift table, right beside the crystal bowl some cousin had bought them. This is a $200,000 loan, I said. Taken out by Jennings Family Holdings, signed by Tyler. Collateral, my 40 acres, And my signature, which I did not put there. My mother's face didn't change. She had trained it not to change. Harper, this is not the time. I pulled out the second document, the quitclaim deed. This is the deed you told the bank I signed while I was traveling for work. I pulled my work calendar, Mom. I was in Columbus that week. In meetings. With time-stamped emails and security badge swipes. I pulled out the third, the affidavit. Her own sworn statement. This is you, telling a federally insured institution that you witnessed my handwriting and I was out of the country. I have never been out of the country, Mom. You know that. You kept my passport in your filing cabinet until I was 26. Tyler had turned around now. Jessica, too. The best man was holding a champagne flute like he might need to throw it. I pulled out my phone. Not to play the recording yet. Just to hold it. 3 weeks ago, I said, my voice carrying just enough to reach the head table. Tyler told me that close enough was good enough for family, that you'd make me sign eventually, that I always fold. I looked at my brother. His face was doing something I had never seen before. It was collapsing. The confident grin, the tech bro posture, the man who had stood on my grandfather's grave and talked about legacy, all of it was crumbling into the face of a little boy who had been caught stealing from the cookie jar. Only the jar was a $250,000 fraud, and the cookies were my future. Harper, he said. It wasn't a denial, it was a plea. I pressed play. The phone speaker wasn't loud, but the tent had gone quiet. Tyler's voice came out, bourbon rough and certain. Close enough. Mom said you'd come around. She always says you're stubborn, but you fold when it counts. Just sign the deed at the wedding, Harp. Make it clean. Make Mom happy. The recording ended. In the silence, a wine glass tipped over somewhere near the bar. Nobody moved to catch it. I looked at my mother. She was staring at the phone like it was a snake. Then she looked at Tyler. And I saw it. The calculation. The same one I had seen at every Thanksgiving when he broke something and she blamed the dog. She was deciding whether to save him or sacrifice me. She chose the way she always chose. Tyler was trying to protect the family, she said. He was trying to build something. You're the one standing here with a recorder at your brother's wedding. What kind of woman does that? I didn't answer. I just pulled out the last document. The one Voss had filed in the Washington County Clerk's office that morning at 9 a.m. A civil complaint. Harper Jennings versus Tyler Jennings, Diane Jennings, and Marietta Community Trust. Quiet title. Fraudulent conveyance. Slander of title. And a criminal referral to the county prosecutor for forgery and perjury. I laid it on top of the wedding gift envelope, centered it, and smoothed the crease. The kind of woman, I said, who doesn't fold. My mother looked at the complaint. Then she looked at me. And she said it again. Softer this time, like a prayer she needed to be true. Sign the deed, Harper, or you're not my daughter. I picked up my bag. The folder stayed on the table. I guess I'm not, I said. But the land is still mine, and Tyler's loan is still due, and your affidavit is still perjury. So you can disown me, Mom. But you can't outrun the paperwork. That's one thing you taught me. Paperwork always catches up. I turned and walked out of the tent. The band had stopped playing. The only sound was my heels on the gravel and, behind me, Jessica starting to cry. I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove to Gloria's double wide. She was on the porch with a fresh cigarette and 3 beers in a cooler. Took you long enough, she said. I sat down. I drank the beer. And for the first time in 6 months, the ground felt solid. The case took 8 months. Tyler declared bankruptcy before Thanksgiving. The LLC dissolved. The bank settled quietly after Voss showed them the forged signatures and their own due diligence failures. Turns out, Linda Karras, the notary, was Tyler's college girlfriend's mother, and she resigned her commission before the state could revoke it. My mother never called me. She told the family I had lawyered up and ruined Tyler's life, and some of them believed her. Some of them didn't. Rachel, my cousin, sent me a text in October that just said, I always thought your signature looked different on that card. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. The land is mine now. Clean title. I go there on weekends when the weather breaks. I walk the wet meadow where the spring runs. I think about my grandfather, who knew the ground better than anyone, and who left it to me because he knew I would protect what was underneath. Last month, I started a small conservation easement. No ranches, no drone deliveries. Just 40 acres of Ohio woods and water, mapped and preserved. My mother still lives in the brick ranch with the thermostat at 72. Tyler works at a gas station outside Parkersburg. I don't know if I'll ever speak to either of them again. But I know this. When I stand on that ridge and look at the ironweed, I can feel the water moving beneath me. True and steady. Going exactly where it should. That's my story. One forged deed. One recorded conversation. One wedding where the truth finally showed up uninvited. If you're sitting on documents that don't feel right, or if someone is telling you that family means giving up what's yours, go check the records. Pull the title. Trace the pressure. And remember, the ground doesn't lie. People do. Drop a comment if this resonated. Subscribe if you're still here. The quiet ones always finish their stories.